Hey folks, December's streaking along for these buds. Marner's 22-game point streak still active. Stars are lighting it up for the 6. Speaking of 6, Matthews 6 and 7. The goaltending has been blanking teams and well, you know what? We're gonna break it all down for you right here on the OZone.
You're in the offensive zone. Your place for Leafs hockey.
Hey folks, welcome to the OZone. That's Coach. That's Katie. I'm the Diva. We're here to talk all things Leafs. Listen, I'm fresh off a trip to the Big Apple, which was rather merry this time of year. Coach, been anywhere since the last time we spoke?
I did catch that game last week in Big D. Then I made my way to Phoenix. That was nice for the weekend. Better than this week coming up, fellas. I'm headed to Boston and Rochester. I've got to bundle up.
Whew. Speaking about bundling up, KD, you've been holding up the fort here in the old 6. How are we doing here in TO?
Lads, we've been mapping out the parade route, and I got to tell you, we're starting from the Danforth, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Anyways, folks, before we really get started, don't
breaking a bunch of plates out there, hey? Every restaurant.
Hit subscribe, ring the bell. You'll never miss any content. Listen, like the video. You know you like it. Share the video. That's just as important. Broadens the audience. And you know what? Leave a comment. We'll get back to it. We always do. We're like Santa Claus. We always answer your messages. We know when you've been bad or good. Okay. Leafs sit 13th in goals for and a stingy 3rd overall in goals allowed. The Leafs have earned points in 14 straight. They're 3-0-1 in December, currently sitting 3rd overall in the conference and the league. It's been a week since we got together here at the OZone, but in that time, we've had back-to-back shutout wins with 2 different goalies. A rare overtime win, which we never see around here, against Calgary. KD, what's most notable over this period? What have you been looking at for these buds?
Wins have been most notable, and they're doing it different ways. You know, we saw Murray steal a game against Dallas. We saw dominant 23-man or 20-man domination against LA, and then we saw special teams kick in against in the last game and win a sloppy game that was kind of wide open, and every puck was going in on both sides. So we're finding different ways to win. We're getting the great goaltending when we need it. We're getting special teams when we need it, and we're finding ways to get W's. It's good. Life seems to be easy. I don't want to jinx it, but life seems to be kind of easy at the moment.
Yeah, Coach. Anything that stands out over this past week for you?
Hey, Kev, you're right. I mean, won games we shouldn't have won, dominated games we should have won. All that is great. A really good stretch here. I am contractually obligated to say none of that matters until the playoffs. But I can't say that on every single podcast, so I'm going to put that aside and just talk about, you're right, Matt Murray stole that game in Big D. That's a 4-0 shutout. But my goodness, I mean, puck was in our end the whole time. The Zamboni came out after the first, just did the Leafs end. So, but that's not what I want to talk about. We gotta there's momentum building here, and yeah, she's gonna pull the football away from Charlie Brown here in the playoffs. Yeah, it'll probably happen. But for now, we feel good about it, ourselves. There's Leaf fans everywhere that are feeling good. So at Big D, I saw a bunch of subscribers. Saw the Hagedorns here, Kimberly and Hank. Hank's a real good buddy. They grew up in Toronto. He's got a cottage in Bob Cajun where he sees the constellations. Yeah, all right. Actually, my buddy Steven dropped by. So Steven is an equipment guy for the Stars. Got me this puck. This warm-up puck. Here's a better shot of it. But a little story about Steven. He's on our beer league team. He's younger. So we called him Young Steven. Until a couple of years ago, he comes to me, he says, "Hey, can you stop calling me Young Steven? I'm 35 years old now." So he's now middle-aged Steven. And he's a subscriber.
Never give it up.
Big fan of the podcast.
Never give it up.
Steve, I hope my light's better this time. Here's a view of the seats, and then I'll finish with this. Beside us were two people from Toronto. They were on a work trip. Paul, and I can't remember her name. Paul's from Woodbridge. Really good guy, Leaf fan. Sitting beside us. Crazy, right? So he afterwards, we're walking up. He's like, hey, you going to go get a drink? I'm like, no, I got to get going. 2 minutes later, he sends me this text. Here's who we bumped into right outside the rink. Brendan Shanahan. So, Leaf fans, go for a drink after you go to a game. You never know who you might see.
That's great. That's a great story. Yeah, Leaf fans travel well, obviously. It's great great that you're able to catch up with some subscribers, too, even on the road. One thing we have to touch on this in this last week because it was somewhat notable when you really backdrop it against the last couple of years for the Leafs, is we got an overtime win. The Leafs have been absolutely awful in overtime this season. 2 wins, 6 losses. KD, have the overtime demons been exercised with this win against Calgary?
Well, who knows? It's just one win, and I drive the coach crazy when I talk about how I hate the lack of strategy in overtime, and that we have the horses to wing it, and we have been. It hasn't been working. But the fact is, it hadn't been working. They were 1 for 6. They had lost their last 5. The last 4 before that without a shot on net. So they changed it up a little bit. They put on a defensive unit with Kampf and the 2 Swedish D, and for whatever reason they got a penalty in 3 seconds, and then they could put they put on the horses and they won it. I like that they just changed it up. It had been tired, and I think it was getting into their head a little bit. Sometimes a streak goes longer than it should because you start to press a bit. And I love that they changed it up, and hopefully this breaks the ice, and then they can do whatever. But I still don't mind the concept of bringing a defensive line first and letting your best guys go against a second and third potentially. So I was happy it worked, and happy they changed it up. Happy they got the win.
Yeah, Coach, what do you think about the OT?
You can't argue against the results. Although I would say the same 4 guys were going out last year. They had a better than 500. The same 4 guys 2 years ago, and they were much better than 500. But, I don't mind changing something up. Looked like a brilliant strategy 3 seconds in. And then, we convert. I would say it would have been a really tough pill to swallow if they get scored on in that first shift and none of your best players even get a sniff in overtime. But that's the risk you take, I guess. Anyway, guys, I still think it's a coin flip. Sometimes it's the logo on the puck, right? Sometimes it's the NHL logo on the other side. It's a coin flip. Here's the thing, though. No shootouts or 3-man overtime in the playoffs, right? So I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so the Leafs, as I mentioned before, 3rd overall in goals against. And a big part of that is the commitment to Team D. There's no question we've litigated this very thoroughly here on this program. But they sit 4th overall in team save percentage, 919 save percentage. And let's be honest, a third of that is playing a third stringer. For the season. So nobody predicted this. Nobody at all. This was a huge area of question for us. And even coming into the season with the injuries, and then how we started the season, which we always seem to do with kind of iffy goaltending at best. These guys are playing well. They're now healthy. Coach, how would you manage this this goaltender tandem or rotation for the rest of December? What are you thinking?
Yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches, isn't it? We're not used to this, fellas. I mean, there was maybe a stretch for 4 or 5 weeks when Campbell and regular season Fred were both healthy and going. But Fred was the clear starter. I'm not sure that's the case here. You're right, Mike. Nobody could have predicted we'd get this kind of goaltending. I predicted that Samsonov would be better than Murray. He has been. If you look at the numbers, Murray's been good, but Samsonov's under 2 goals a game and a 933 save percentage. Guys, that's going to come down. Yep. But he's playing great. What I didn't predict is he'd play this great, and I sure didn't predict that Matt Murray would be this great. Now, little leaky, recently, right? That playoff goal or the overtime goal against Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Couple, 2 or 3 maybe goals against Calgary. But hey, he's winning games, and he's had the best performance of the year. That game against Dallas was
100%.
ridiculous. So how I'd manage it is this. What's the rush? We don't need a number 1 guy until we really need him, which is April. So I'd rotate him. If a guy needs a little pep, like I think you guys, Devo, you had this. Murray gives up that overtime goal in Pittsburgh. I think you or maybe Kev, you said I'd come back with him just to tell him, like, don't feel like you're going to fester on it for a few days. Come back. So yeah, I suppose you give guys 2 in a row, but I'd keep everybody playing at least every 2 games. And that's the way I'd manage it. Just because let's see it play out. There's lots of hockey left.
Lots of hockey. Hopefully they can stay healthy. KD, how would you run this unit?
Yeah, I was sort of along that vein too. I'm a big fan of the streaky goalie and trying to ride them out, but I don't. If you really have a tandem, you can't ride a streaky goalie 6 and 7 games in a row. So I like the idea. I think you're right. If you look at the way we're in now, Murray's looked a little leaky the last 2 games. So maybe Samsonov becomes the 1A for a little while. Maybe he gets to carry the puck a little bit longer and plays 2 to 3 games, and you kind of go that way, and then see if it tilts back towards Murray and give him a bit. So I'm sort of a fan of doing that, and certainly they both have to see a lot of pucks this year, and at the same time they both need to be healthy come March and April. So I don't know if you do the house league like 1 and now 1, but certainly both guys should play each week for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's going to be a lot of back-to-back games still left in this season, so I think the travel and the schedule has to dictate a lot of what you do. I like the idea of what happened last game. Or go back a few games before the shutouts. Matt Murray, as you mentioned, lets in a leaky one. Coach goes back to him. Team loves that. Player plays great in front of him. Gets a shutout. What does the other guy do? Oh, he just got a shutout? I'm going to come in. I'm going to shut the guy out too. You got them competing in a healthy way against each other. This is what you want to do all season long. And you got to listen to the trainers. Once these guys are in a horse race, they're not going to want to sit no matter how banged up they get. But we're trying to win a cup here. So if anyone's 99%, give them a day off. Let them soak it out in the tub. And move on. We've got a guy Shelgren who's proven he can play at the NHL level, at least to spare some guys, even just a couple of games. We say this all the time, and Coach, I'll say it for you. It doesn't matter what we do in January, February. It matters what we're going to be doing in April and May, and we need these guys healthy then, and we need someone to at least be hot and streaky then. That would be the best time for it.
Hey, fellas, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this. How much do you think this is just luck, finding both guys who'd really bottomed out and betting on them being better? Or how much of it do you think it's the goaltending coach and the way they're being handled? Remember, the Leafs have a new guy, Curtis Sanford, right? Briere got fired after last year. I don't know. How would I know, right? Well, I'm not in there.
Who knows? It's the horse whisperers, what those guys do. And no one knows what they do with the goalies. Yeah. Well, the bottom line is both these guys have proven they can be stars in this league in fits and spats. One of them has been trying to get
Murray especially, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and Samsonov certainly has shown he can play well. He's had some good runs in his career.
And I think Murray went back to a familiar place. Granted, it is Toronto, which is not really all that cushy when things are going badly. But he went back to old coaches and old GMs. They stuck him full of new coaches and new trainers, and so I think where he was on his way out in Pittsburgh and then in Ottawa, I think they treat him like a star, and I think that was good for his psyche. And then I think Samsonov came here betting on himself. Took a 1-year deal virtually for free, and he said, "Well, this is going to be the environment. I'm going to be under the microscope, but I'm going to show you." So I think one guy's really super motivated, and one guy needs the love, and one guy's. I think they're getting both of what they need.
Yeah,
Hey,
it's funny.
look at you, Dr. Phil over there.
That's true.
Hey,
It's true, and well, even what we talked about, Murray gets a shutout, and what does he do? He comes in and pitches a no the next game. So he's obviously a guy who can gamble a little bit. And if you look at back when Roberto Luongo signed that big deal, it destroyed him. He had a big deal. He had extra expectation on him to carry the load. Maybe taking a couple $1 million off Murray's contract might actually help him out a little bit. Who knows?
maybe the guy in Edmonton might suffer from that. Hey, I'll tell you what, fellas, let's wrap this one up. Kev, you mentioned a familiar place. I might get to a familiar place here, so let's wrap it up.
All right, well, there you have it, folks. Marner is streaking. The Leafs are streaking. It's a great time to be a Leafs fan. Christmas is coming. We've got you covered right here on the Ozone.
6 out of 10, Coach. 6 out of 10.